something called Bokkieweek happened in Limpopo recently. Afrikaner-only schools sports tournament. Participants sang the Stem, competed under the names of the former apartheid provinces. The sports that were played, the official bodies distanced themselves from that event. The week used Springbok-style colours. The organisers, Afrikaner Volkseie Sport, argued that the tournament is a lawful expression of Afrikaner culture and said that it is under no legal obligation to sing the national anthem or display the new South African flag. Professor Steve Cornelius joins us now, Dean of Law at the Faculty of University of Pretoria, an expert in sports law and in constitutional issues relating to sport and its governance. Steve, very good afternoon. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
No, I mean, there are two conversations to be had here. One is around whether something like this is a good idea in South Africa in the present and with the future we're trying to build and with our past. And the second, and I don't know which is the more important of the conversations, is did they infringe any law by holding this tournament under the conditions under which the tournament was held? Let's start with an answer to the second one first.
Yeah, and as you say, it's actually a very complex matter, that there's no simple, unique answer. So if one just looks very technically at the black letter law and the technical interpretation of the law, there is space for something like this if it is done appropriately and correctly. Especially Section 31 of the Constitution provides expressly that cultural communities or linguistic communities may have events unique to their culture and to their language group. So that per se is not necessarily against the spirit or against the letter of the law. The question, of course, could be whether it's the way that it is done is in the spirit of what is intended in the Constitution. And then also the Sport and Recreation Act imposes certain obligations on national federations, which, of course, again, it does not give any of these national federations exclusivity to their sport necessarily. But the idea is that particular sports will be done under the supervision and auspices of particular sports. So it's not unique to this kind of event. You would have seen a few times when a particular road race or a cycle race is being advertised, and then the National Federation would say, but this is not sanctioned by us, so you have the risk of being excluded from our events if you participate in non-sanctioned events. So it's actually a much more complicated thing than just looking at the letter of the law. One has to interpret the spirit of the law and the intention behind that. And the way this was done for me is questionable.
In what way questionable, Steve?
Well, I think simply if you are going to sing the national anthem, sing the full national anthem. Don't focus on that. Why the focus on the old provincial colours that were being used? So it's almost as if it's clutching at things of a bygone era and that have moved on. And also to have a very exclusive one, the real strength, and you talked about the nation building, but also the strength of any system also comes in diversity. And for me, I often get the question, what makes a university worthwhile? And I would say, well, it's the diversity of the people that actually attends the university and study that really takes us forward. And it's the same with the sports event. The more diversity you have, the current Football World Cup is a fantastic example. Everybody was saying initially expanding the World Cup is going to be a disaster. I think this was the best World Cup ever because of the diversity of the teams that participated. And I think if we just focus exclusively on a particular group for whatever reason, then I think we're just missing out on the opportunities that engaging with diversity gives us and the strength that we build through that.
The organisers might well argue that what they're doing is, akin to perhaps Zulu culture organizing a tournament which celebrates a particular Zulu sporting tradition, stick fighting or something like that. And I mean, I don't know if such a tournament were to be held, and if if a private school in KwaZulu-Natal had introduced stick fighting to all of its boys, to its boys of Indian origin, to its boys of coloured origin, to its white boys, and they'd all learned some stick fighting, I suspect that they might be invited to the tournament despite the fact that they weren't of the Zulu culture. I don't know for sure, but that would be my guess.
Yeah, but to take your argument just to a different direction, if it is a pure cultural expression, then the typical, Boere sport that they always talked about, tug of war or toe track and sack races and yukskei, and then that's something different. But having rugby and netball and these kinds of sports, which are actually more diverse sports, and it's not simply a cultural expression. It's a broader expression, and I once had an argument in Europe where I was participating in a discussion on European imperialism in sport, and the fact that the Europeans are always trying to prescribe to the rest of the world. The one argument was, but we came up with a sport, and I said no. If you want to take that argument, you have got to say all our modern sports actually originated in the English public schools. You can't even claim that then as a cultural expression to say rugby is part of our culture, because that's an English culture. It's not an Afrikaans culture. Yes, we love our rugby, but like all the other people in South Africa, we love our rugby. And it's not necessarily that you're expressing your culture by participating in that. Do the traditional sports then that the voortrekkers did when they traveled and things like that, that's something different. And that would be akin to what you're talking about, the stick fighting, for instance, in the Zulu culture, for instance. So that's different, and then I think people would have less of an issue with this event if it was in that context.
Isn't it illegal to display the old South African flag? I mean, I'm not sure that it should be, but do I not remember a court order saying that displaying the apartheid flag, the flag of the Republic of South Africa, was an offence?
I'm not sure if it's strictly an offence, but it has been. I think the Human Rights Commission and the court has previously said that it is akin to hate speech because of what that flag represents. And again, using these old symbols, especially with young children that are impressionable, and that will inevitably have to go out in a world where some of those symbols are being frowned upon, is really also, one could ask the question, are you acting in the best interest of the child? And when it comes to children, that is the primary question you ask in law always. What is in the best interest of the child? And I think, doing things like that is adults making decisions based on their preferences that I'm not sure is always in the best interest of the child if they do that.
Professor Steve Cornelius, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon, sports law expert, Dean of the Faculty of Law at the University of Pretoria.